People keep working harder long after the system has stopped paying for what that effort produces. That is the pattern this video is diagnosing. Not laziness disguised as disappointment, not lack of resilience, not a generation-wide collapse in discipline. A more structural problem. Effort can continue increasing even after the system has stopped rewarding the thing that effort is increasing. This is why the feeling is so disorienting. The person is still active, still trying, still producing, still carrying weight. But the outcome no longer changes. The extra work no longer converts into more pay, more recognition, more opportunity, more freedom, or even more security. Motion is still happening. Movement is not. The usual explanation is simpler. People are told that effort works until they quit. If the result is not improving, the conclusion is supposed to be that consistency broke down, patience ran out, or the person has not yet reached the threshold where persistence starts to pay off. The logic is linear. More effort, more results, eventually. That logic only holds while the system continues rewarding the same variable. Consider Elena. She works at a growing company in a mid-level role. For the first few years, the pattern seems clear. She stays late, handles more projects, volunteers for difficult work, responds quickly, and becomes known as dependable. The results follow. Good performance reviews, more trust, better projects, slight salary increases. Her effort appears to be working because the system still values throughput and reliability at her level. So Elena keeps increasing the same thing. She takes on more. She gets faster. She makes herself available. She solves problems before they become visible. She becomes the person others rely on when work spills over. She assumes this is still the path because it was the path before. Then the movement stops. Her compensation barely changes. Her title stays the same. Larger opportunities go to people who do not seem to work as hard. She remains busy, useful, and respected. But nothing opens. The work expands. The outcome does not. At that point, most people reach for a familiar explanation. Work smarter, not harder. Prioritize better. Communicate more. Be more strategic. Those phrases are not always wrong, but they often blur the real issue. They treat the problem as a style error inside the individual. The deeper issue is often structural. Elena is still increasing effort, but the system is no longer pricing effort the way it used to. That is the mechanism. Effort is not a universal input with a universal return. It only produces movement when it is attached to a variable the surrounding system rewards. Early in many roles, effort maps cleanly to visible output. More hours, more responsiveness, more consistency, more reliability. Those can create noticeable gains because the system is built to reward stabilization and execution at that stage. But systems change what they reward as position, market conditions, organizational maturity, or competitive density changes. At a certain point, the limiting factor is no longer raw effort. It may become visibility, it may become access, it may become positional leverage, it may become timing, it may become whether the organization even has room to convert more contribution into more movement. If the rewarded variable shifts while the person keeps increasing effort starts hitting a wall. The person usually interprets this as personal failure. That interpretation is often wrong. Elena is not necessarily declining. She may be optimizing a variable that has stopped mattering. Her additional hours may no longer create advantage because everyone at that level is already assumed to be capable and hardworking. Her reliability may no longer differentiate her because it has been absorbed into expectation. Her willingness to rescue broken processes may no longer signal readiness for something larger. It may simply make her useful in place. This is the effort saturation point. Not a dramatic collapse, a quieter structural moment where increasing the same input stops producing proportional return because the system has shifted to valuing something else. The person is still turning the same dial. The machine is now responding to a different dial. That is why hard work often feels most confusing after it has worked once before. Previous reward trains the person into repetition. The system says, in effect, this input creates progress. The person learns the rule and keeps following it. But the rule was conditional. It applied to a specific stage, role, or structure. When those conditions change, the learned behavior can become outdated without becoming visibly irrational. Elena is being rational based on old evidence. The system is responding based on new incentives. That is why effort failure often appears suddenly, even though it was building gradually. The person crosses from a zone where output is rewarded into a zone where output is assumed. Or the company enters a tighter environment where efficiency matters more than dedication. Or advancement starts depending less on who carries the most work and more on who occupies the right decision channels. Or income growth decouples from work volume because the role itself has a ceiling. In each case, effort remains real. Its conversion mechanism changes. This is easier to see in simple examples. Take hourly work. A person can work harder, become faster, pick up more shifts, and stay more available. That effort may increase income for a while, but the role is still bounded by time. Once the schedule is full, effort cannot create much more movement. The person can keep exerting, but the structure has capped the return. The problem is not discipline. The problem is that time is no longer the variable that can expand the outcome. The same logic appears in salaried work. An employee may increase responsiveness, volume, and task ownership. Early on, this makes the person stand out. Later, it becomes baseline expectation. The company starts rewarding cross-functional visibility, political trust, or control over scarce decisions instead. The employee continues maximizing execution. The organization has shifted toward rewarding position. The result is stagnation that looks personal but is actually structural. It appears in creative fields too. A person makes more work, improves quality, becomes more disciplined, publishes consistently. But discovery is governed by distribution, platform incentives, timing, audience access, and gatekeeping. More creation can still matter, but beyond a point, effort alone cannot force attention from a system that is rewarding reach, not just craft. In each case, the mistake is the same. People treat effort as if it has independent power. It does not. Effort is only powerful when attached to a rewarded variable. That is what Elena's situation demonstrates. It does not prove that effort is meaningless. It proves that effort is conditional. The return depends on what the system recognizes, needs, and is currently designed to exchange value for. If the system wants output, output helps. If it wants position, output alone stalls. If it wants access, more intensity inside the same lane does little. If it wants timing, consistency may arrive too late. If it wants visible leverage, invisible labor becomes structurally cheap no matter how exhausting it is to produce. This is why the phrase, "why hard work isn't paying off," has such a specific texture. It is not the feeling of doing nothing and getting nothing. It is the feeling of increasing input inside a system that has quietly stopped converting that input into movement. That is also why "how to work smarter, not harder" often misstates the diagnosis. It suggests that the problem is inefficiency inside the same framework. But many people are not failing because they are working in a stupid way. They are failing because the variable they are intensifying is no longer the variable governing the result. Working smarter inside the wrong variable is still optimization inside the wrong variable. This explains a pattern people notice but struggle to name. The hardest working person is often not the one moving fastest. The person with the fullest days is often not the one gaining the most freedom. The most responsible employee is often not the one gaining the most power. This looks unfair in moral terms because effort feels like it should matter more than it does. Structurally, the issue is different. Systems are not reward machines for virtue. They are sorting mechanisms for the variables they are built to prioritize. That is why people can increase labor and get back only more labor. Once a person becomes known for capacity, the system may route more demand toward that capacity rather than convert it into advancement. Once someone becomes the reliable one, the reward may be more dependence. Once someone proves they can absorb pressure, the system may send additional pressure instead of movement. This is not because the system is evil in some grand sense. It is because systems tend to extract from the variable that is abundant and reward the variable that is scarce. If effort is abundant and access is scarce, access will dominate outcome. If reliability is abundant and position is scarce, position will dominate outcome. If production is abundant and attention is scarce, distribution will dominate outcome. The person on the ground often experiences this as betrayal because the original social promise was different. Work hard, be serious, stay committed. Improvement will follow. But those promises are usually true only in early, local, or partial contexts. They are not laws. To make the contrast clearer, imagine another system where the rewarded variable still matches effort. Take a role where output is directly measured, directly compensated, and still linked to expansion. More completed sales create more commissions. More billable work creates more revenue. More units produced at acceptable quality create more pay. In that environment, increased effort can still create movement because the system continues valuing the same variable the person is increasing. Now place the same person in a system where outcomes depend on access to decision makers, closed promotion slots, algorithmic distribution, credential filters, or capped compensation bands. The same seriousness, consistency, and endurance now produce a weaker return. The behavior did not suddenly become inferior. The structure changed. That is the reframe. When effort stops working, the immediate assumption is usually psychological. Burnout, loss of edge, weak execution, poor attitude, lack of grit. Those things exist, but they are not the only explanation, and often not the main one. Effort failure can be diagnostic. It can signal that the active constraint is no longer the amount of work being applied. That matters because it removes some of the confusion. The person is no longer forced to explain stagnation as an invisible moral defect. It becomes possible to see a colder reality. The system has shifted away from rewarding the variable they are still feeding. That is why people often say some version of the same sentence. I'm doing more than ever, but nothing is changing. Usually that is treated as frustration. More accurately, it is information. It means the output of effort and the mechanism of advancement have separated. The relevant variable is incentive. Once that becomes visible, the situation reads differently. The stalled career, flat income, or static recognition is no longer interpreted only as proof that the person needs to push harder. It can also be read as evidence that effort is landing on a variable the system has already priced cheaply or absorbed completely. And this pattern does not stop at work. The same logic appears anywhere people keep increasing devotion after the surrounding structure has stopped rewarding devotion. In money, in status, in creative labor, in social belonging, even in relationships where one person keeps giving more after the governing terms have already hardened. A system cannot keep producing movement from effort once effort is no longer the variable it rewards.